welcome to another episode of Gentle Power. We are very excited to be welcoming our first guest to the pod. I think this is our first guest, right? It's always just been us.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, we would like to introduce to everyone Joe Dillon of Equitable Mediation. And this is actually, it's really funny how we first met because I think someone from your team did a cold outreach and emailed me, probably
Yep,
found us through Spotify or for our website.
yep.
But in the title subject of the email, it said something about
The
divorce lawyer or mediating divorce. And when I saw that, I was like, wait, what is this? I'm like, what's
I
happening
didn't
here?
get this memo.
Yeah, so I had an initial like, okay, why are we getting hit up by some divorce thing? Do you and I need to have a talk or something like that? But when I read through the email, your team member had reached out to us. Oh, I think Garrett's
I'm
always
trying
trying to
to dog.
get the dog, but she's yeah.
Yeah.
But when I read through the email and I saw that it was from your team member and explaining what you do and how there was what immediately came to me was that there was just so much overlap
Yeah.
in our work around negotiations and Joe, your work around
Yeah.
mediating amicable divorces. So first, would love to hear just a quick intro on you, what equitable mediation is, what you do for your clients, and then we can jump right into it.
Yeah, great. Well, this is amazing, right? I had no idea I was your first guest, so I promise I'll do my very best to make you proud. So yeah, equitable mediation has been around since 2008. My wife Cheryl and I founded the company, much like the two of you, right? So we had that in common. And we help people amicably divorce without lawyers. So we practice in 6 states: Washington, California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And we help people engage in direct negotiations to resolve all the issues of their divorce. A lot of times in a divorce, when you get lawyers involved, some of my best friends are lawyers, no disrespect to attorneys. But when you add that other layer of complexity in between two parties trying to reach agreement, it can really muddy the waters and it can sometimes create hostilities where they don't normally exist. So, by engaging people in direct negotiations, we're able to help them resolve those issues, clear misunderstandings, get to the heart of the matter, and help them learn techniques. Because guess what? Especially when you have kids, you're still going to be mom and dad, right? So you're still going to be interacting with each other, even though you're not husband and wife anymore. So we also want to teach them some ways of reframing and breaking that communication pattern that's probably happened over the course of their marriage. So it's a very strange business to get into, not something when you're on a playground as a kid that you think, hey, I want to be a divorce mediator. My parents litigated their divorce, and that's really what brought me here. I sat in the back of the courtroom and saw the whole drama unfold. So it's a pretty natural thing for me to do. So here I am. And my goodness, 17 years later, so in private practice.
Wow,
Wow,
wow.
that's what a story.
Yeah, that's very cool. And you make a really good point. I feel like maybe our society or culture or whatnot, as soon as you say, or as soon as you get a lawyer involved, then a lot of defenses just
Yeah.
immediately shoot up, right? And
Of
in our
course,
line of
yeah.
work, when we help people negotiate job offers, we also coach our clients to not say things or bring
Yeah.
and introduce things into the conversation that may just put up the defenses in
Right.
employer's defense. And I think that's very
Mhm.
similar in your case, with your clients as well.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
when we help some clients negotiate their severance packages. It's so top of mind to be like, what can I threaten them with? Maybe you're
Right.
a protected class or anything like that, or you fired me unjustly, but we tell them try the more nice approach. And I'm curious, is there a particular training? You said you're not attorneys, you and your wife, right? So how did you get
Correct.
into this line of work in terms of do you need to have any like trainings or licenses or anything like that?
Yeah, so great question. So, as negotiation professionals, you're probably familiar with the book Getting to Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the classic treatise on negotiation. Well, I was fortunate enough to go and take a program at Harvard University, and the instructors were the authors of the book.
Yeah.
Mm.
And and it was when it first came out, back in the 90s when I took this class. And it was like my head just exploded, just listening to this and being immersed in this environment and understanding all the game theory and things that are really the heart of negotiation. Sat there in this course, just absorbed as much as I could. And then from that day forward, I just became negotiation guy. I was, wow, this is amazing. So I read as much as I could, learned, took classes at MIT, took classes at Northwestern in Chicago. I took a 40-hour divorce mediation training class in New Jersey. That's how I got my start. And to your question, that's a bare minimum that someone needs in order to be a mediator.
Yeah.
However, as we'll explore, right, negotiation, it's a learned skill and it's a practiced skill. You can't just say, well, I read a book on it and I'm a pro. You need to be immersed in it all the time, learn it, live it, love it, and embrace it as a way. So that's what I've made my career over 28 years. Actually, I've been negotiating. 17 have been in private practice doing divorce. But prior to that, I had been in a corporate setting doing negotiations as well. So just absorbing everything I can.
We've had a similar journey. Alex also took a negotiations course at Harvard Kennedy School. I took some at MIT as well. So that's it's so fascinating. And then once you get immersed into that world, you start, doing your own research and practicing and all that, and it compounds. So that's cool to see that we've had similar journeys. Maybe we can get started with some of the questions we had prepared. We want to keep in mind the negotiations angle to your answers throughout because that's our audience, but it sounds like we're
Mhm.
already on the same page on that. Do you represent the couple or one person?
That's a great question. And the couple. So I
Mm,
say I don't represent either. I advocate for both. I want them to get the true win-win.
right.
So that's how I'm working at it. If I say to people, if one of you is really happy with me at the end of this, and one of you is really upset, then I did not do my job. My
Mm,
job is to help bring you to the table, to show you that you have to give to get. And at the end of the day, we both kind of walk away, we meaning the couple,
yeah.
both walk away from this saying, okay, I didn't get everything I wanted, but I got a satisfactory outcome. Because in a divorce, really, you think about it, right? No one ever says, hey, that was the greatest divorce I ever had, right? That was
Yeah.
awesome. It's usually like, okay, that's the best I can hope for. The bar's low, you two.
That's funny. I'm curious like what that looks like, actually working with them. And I'm personally curious how you prep your clients. Do you have materials you have them go through, videos or books or anything like that? Any mantras? For context, Alex took an ethics class at Wharton, and I guess the overarching summary of the course that the professor would keep emphasizing was just settle. Don't worry about what's fair or whatever laws and all that.
Mhm.
Just try to settle. Is there anything like that that you like what is you coaching them to in terms of mindset or even practical like readings and books and stuff like that? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gerda. And what you really are getting at is process and framework. When we think about negotiations, a lot of us just walk in blind. Someone who's a good negotiator is going to survey the playing field. They're going to figure out where the boundaries are. You're going to start in your own head, right? Analyzing what's the best alternative to this, what's the worst alternative to this, right? And you're going at it. And so a lot of our clients who aren't negotiators and are coming into the situation emotionally, they don't have a framework. So we provide them structure, framework, a process. Here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to control the narrative. Here's the order we're going to talk about in it so that it doesn't get spiral out of control. Here's some readings, some videos to watch and read before you enter the negotiations. We even give them a mini course on negotiating a divorce,
Oh,
teaching them the language that the three of us commonly use about anchoring and reframing and all those things that we just do all day. And people are like, what do you mean by anchoring? What, I'm not on a boat, right? You're like,
right.
we'll get to that. Okay. And part of that is just trying to keep them focused. And as you were just saying, the mantra for us is, would you rather settle the terms of your divorce, or would you have a stranger that is a judge in a court of law
Mm,
settle it for you? That's our mantra. And people are like, well, I don't want anyone telling me what to do. Great, then let's settle it here. So
got
we
it.
use that same trick, technique, if you will, to get people to come and stay at the table.
That's fascinating. And I'm curious, did you prepare some materials yourself or did you assemble from all the courses and trainings that you got?
Yeah, this is 100% us. And I think part of what happens, and with mediation, so to give you an idea, in divorce situations, about 70% of mediations result in a negotiated settlement. So 30% wind up escalating into some,
Mhm.
other lawyers or court, whatever it is. We can get, we track this. In the 17 years, we've lost, I think, 6 clients. So we're at about 98% case resolution rate. And part of that is exactly what I just said. It's all the things we've learned, all the techniques we've developed, all the materials we offer, the process, all of that comes together to help people reach agreement. And I really do think when you think through negotiation, that is an important part of it, preparation, whether you are negotiating a salary or you're trying to get your friend to go see the movie you want. You
Yeah.
need to do your homework, right? You can't just walk in and assume someone's going to give you what you want. You need to give them a reason to say yes.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do the same in giving them a reason to come to agreement.
Yeah.
Lawyers bad, judge bad. Let's empower you. Let's still be parents after this is all over, whatever it is, right? So, and part of that is that educational material because then they learn, wow, divorce isn't as cut and dry, just like any negotiation. When you think there's going to be some outcome and you think you see it coming right down the street and then takes a hard right turn and suddenly you've agreed to something different or somebody's proposed something new. Oh, I didn't see that coming. We want them to see that coming. We want them to be able to broaden their perspectives and see all eventualities. And when they do that, they realize a lot again how it's much better to come to the agreement right here, right now. So.
Love
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Joe, just to get into exactly when you take on a client and the negotiation and the mediation begins, I would love to hear
Mhm.
what are some very common mistakes that people make or a frame that they're coming into the negotiation with that you think that is not helpful. And would love to hear just whether that's mindset or their belief in certain tactics. What are some common mistakes that you see?
And I would love to hear common ones, but also maybe some unique ones as well.
Some in the confidential process of divorce. Yeah, I think we all go into a negotiation thinking, well, of course, what I want is what's going to happen. Of course, I'm right. Of course, this is the best alternative, right? And so, because we want it, we thought of it. Yeah, of course. The other person looks at you like, what do you, no way, I'm not agreeing to that. And we're just shocked shocked and what do you mean I can't get it? You won't double my salary, right? Like, of course, I'm a great worker. You should be lucky to have me. So when we think of that, when we try to caution people without coming in without any preconceived notions, certainly it's helpful to have some thoughts, but really be willing and open to know that the facts on the ground are going to change and what even you might think you wanted or is fair may change. So that's one thing, right? We're always fighting. People are going online or talking to friends. That's the hardest, right? You in a divorce situation, everybody's got a friend who's been divorced. So of course they go talk to them, and this person says, "Well, my ex friend's ex gave them $10,000 a month in alimony," and I'm like, yeah, because they were the CFO of a company. Your spouse is works at Target as a cashier and making 16.50 an hour. That's
Hmm.
not going to work here. So that's one thing. Another thing is, and this is universal, and this is for your listeners, for our clients, everybody. We have a saying in divorce where we say, don't do the deciding before the discovery. And what I really mean by that
I love
is
that. Yeah.
go into a negotiation armed with information. Would you show up at a job interview not knowing what the salary range was and you just started asking for, I want $500,000 and they're like, this is great, but you're a cashier at McDonald's,
Yeah.
right? You're right. You have to understand where you were at. And that's, I think, a key mistake that people make. They just come in, again, tied to their maybe unrealistic expectations, no concept or clue about how things work. So we wind up in these very unrealistic situations. So those are the two big ones.
Yeah.
The unusual the
Go ahead.
unusual ones, Gerda, to your question, is that there can be people who are, I want to say, they're almost too smart for their own good,
Oh,
Hmm.
and they think that they're going to be hiding something or pulling the wool over somebody's eyes, and they're going to use that to get a leg up in the negotiation. And what they don't realize is that they're so overconfident that we're all seeing right through them and we know exactly what they're doing.
yeah.
So, and that's when things really go sideways because the other person feels not only duped, but that the other person wasn't being honest, right? Honesty in negotiations to a certain extent, right? You want to keep some cards close to the vest, but you don't want to flat out lie either. That's really going to damage trust and make it really difficult to come to agreement. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's how we frame it too. It's like we definitely don't want to lie. You want to be ethical, but you also,
mhm.
it's like a game of cards where you can't win. You can't even play if you show your hand. That's
Right,
how
right.
we think of it similarly. So do you also coach them separately then, or you just coach them together?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, with our the way we do mediation, my wife, who is my business partner, she's a divorce coach.
Mm,
So as a mediator, concepts people, of course, from negotiation is caucusing, right? So when we caucus, that's a mediator. Even though I'm a neutral third party, I may engage with someone one on one. I personally choose never to caucus. I always feel like it builds mistrust. Some
mm,
other mediators are fans of caucus to get past that impasse. On the other hand, our clients have the option to work with my partner, Cheryl, who's a divorce coach. When
mm,
they work with Cheryl, it's always one on one. With me, it's always one on two.
mm.
So if they need some coaching, if they run into something or my soon to be ex is making me crazy, they can work with Cheryl and Cheryl will help them with some negotiation techniques. A lot of them, right, in a divorce, they're emotional. And all of our negotiations, if we don't get what we want,
Yeah.
we get emotional about it. So she helps them temper those expectations, temper those emotions, help them frame out what their argument is, figure out what the interest versus the position is, right? And then I can always tell when someone comes in a session, our next divorce mediation session, where I'm like, you're using words that you didn't use last time, like interest based negotiation. I think you've been talking to
Talking to
Cheryl,
my wife, yeah.
Yeah. So, unless you just read a book or something happened, right? So we do have a way of doing that and getting them some one-on-one without it having to be me.
Yeah, I like that. First of all, I like that both you and your wife have complementary services as part of your business.
Yeah.
That there's the coaching and
Mhm.
there's the mediation part. I really
I'm like,
like,
how should we apply that?
yeah, I was thinking, I'm like, do we need to open up different
Yeah.
complementary services that somehow all, flywheel into each other? But you mentioned one of
Yeah.
the mistakes around how people have preconceived notions or really strong beliefs about what they believe they should be getting out of this divorce and this
Right.
negotiation that really also that made me think about a lot of either clients or potential clients that we have because when they first approach us and we learn a bit more about their situation, perhaps, the market is down and they made 200K, but all the offers they're getting are in the 100 to 150K. And they really have this belief that I'm not going to accept anything below 200K or what I made
Right.
before. And they have this almost like they're
And
offended by the
yeah,
market.
and entitled.
Yeah, and there's often a lot of coaching around reframing how they should be thinking
Hmm.
about their next offer. So even if all the offers are coming in a bit lower, there's still opportunities for you to negotiate that to get it as close to what you were making before, or maybe negotiate other aspects of the job offer so that overall you have this personal win-win situation where you feel better off holistically. I really like that it seemed to be there was a
Yep.
lot of overlap between your clients and your work and ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. And I think I was just going to say, Alex, that's smart for you to bring that up. You have to remind people it's not to get you the outcome you want. It's to get you, whoever you is in this example, the best possible outcome in this unique situation at this point in time.
Yeah, that's what
That's
Yes.
we
it,
say too. Yeah, exactly.
right?
We say that every open role has a budget that we cannot know what it is. We want you to
Right.
not leave money on the table. We can't
Right.
guarantee that you will get some number that you have in mind. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly.
we get this question a lot where people ask, what will get me the highest comp increase? What are the factors that I need to think about? And it's hard for us to give a universal factor that applies to everybody because exactly based on what you said, it also applies to our clients. One of the biggest factors on how high of a comp increase is what are the unique business needs for that role of that company at the time that you're applying.
That's exactly.
Because let's say there's an open role that you applied for, and the typical pay range is X to Y. But let's say that open role has been open for a year, unfilled. They've been trying to fill it, and within the
Right.
next month, they have a huge launch coming up, and they need to fill that seat so someone can lead that launch. Well, in that 1 month
Hmm.
period when you're applying, the company will likely be willing to pay more to fill someone because they have this urgent need. So what
Yeah,
you said just perfectly aligned with what we also coach our clients on.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, think about how much toilet paper cost during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? It's like, did we all need more toilet paper? No, we just irrationally felt like there was a panic and the
Right.
price went up, and like
Yeah.
because there was a need, So
Yeah. Supply and demand. Um,
exactly.
I was just thinking because we get this question all the time, and I bet you do too. I'm gonna ask it because our audiences are probably curious. Do you and your wife use negotiation skills with each other?
Absolutely. In fact, our friends always tease us. They're like, we can never tell if you guys are arguing. You fight so nicely. And it's part of what we do. And I think that's the key. When you think about negotiations, they're centered on respectful communication. You don't have to like what the other person is saying. You don't have to agree with them. But as rational thinkers and as humans, I'm always trying to tell people, I know this is going to be your soon to be ex-spouse. And of course, by definition, divorce is a conflict. And I would like to no longer be married to you, whoever you is in this example. However, that doesn't give you the right to treat them this way, or doesn't give you the right to call them names or scream and yell. That's not what this is about. Negotiations are the same thing, right? When I'm interacting with my wife, we're talking about things, we're anchoring, we're using vulnerability, we're using reframing, we're using all those techniques because even if you're not aware that you're using them, right? They're things that help facilitate productive conversations because at the end of the day, just like when you were talking before about the course you took at Wharton, where it's just settle, as a married couple, do you want to be mad at each other? Or do you want to move past this argument and get on with the rest of your weekend, right? You want the latter. So, what's it going to take to get us there? Let's just move on and let's just, in this case, settle might be apologize, for example, with your spouse, but the result's the same. You're moving past the conflict and you're using various techniques to do it, and you're using respectful communication to get yourself there.
Yeah.
Love it.
So, negotiations we have found in our line of business, emotions tend to run high, especially for job offers. It feels like there's a lot on the line.
First.
Yeah, and for divorce, I mean, it's a very
Yeah,
emotionally charged situation. And so
absolutely.
we're curious, how do you help clients separate their emotions from the negotiation process, but without dismissing or minimizing anyone's feelings?
Yeah, this is classic. This is classic normalizing,
Mm.
right? When we think about behavioral science, we want people to feel that they're not some aberrant person, that they're not some unusual going through something no one else has gone through before. As you just
Mm.
said, right, Alex? It's like divorce by definition is an emotional time. And so, what I'll say to clients, look, it's perfectly normal to feel this way. In fact, you guys, as you guys get to know me, I tend to try to keep things a little lighter. Not that I think divorce is funny, but I want to humanize the process. I want people to say, wow, Joe was really nice at a time when we needed somebody who was just kind and a little bit funny and a little bit lighthearted about it. And so we'll say to folks, listen, you're not the only person who's ever gone through this. You're not going to be the only person who ever goes through it again. What you're feeling is perfectly normal. It makes perfect sense that you're upset. And I'll say, like, if you weren't upset, I would probably be concerned. And that's a true
Right.
statement, right?
Yeah.
Nobody goes and gets married with the intention of getting divorced tomorrow.
Yeah.
You probably went through quite a bit of struggle as a couple when you came to the point where you finally said, I think it's over. We can't do this anymore. So that is a really difficult point. We'll use that normalization. That's typically what works the best when someone's upset because then they don't feel so alone. They feel heard. You give them time, right? A lot of times when people are negotiating, sometimes they feel compelled to rush pressure. The best thing you can do is let people breathe, let them take their time. You want to take a walk, you want to go get a coffee, you want to end our session for today and come back at this next week, no problem. That makes the people feel heard. They can then reconcile with what they're feeling, and it helps us move forward in a productive way.
Awesome.
How,
Thank you for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, have you ever had cases where it felt like an amicable resolution was impossible? I mean, how did you, or if you ever had some sort of really hard impasse in a negotiation, both sides couldn't move forward, what do you do in those situations?
Yeah, look for the common enemy. Everyone's got one,
It's the
right?
judge, right?
Exactly. Perfect. Absolutely. It's the legal system. We can
Yeah,
all rally against the legal system. We don't
yeah,
even have to blame the judges or lawyers. My
yeah.
friends are lawyers. My friends are judges. Boy, the system is terrible, isn't it? It's stacked against us. Man, the heck with that system. Let's resolve it right here. Let's do it. And funny enough that you asked that question, sometimes people will ask me, do you think your role, Joe, is more as a negotiator or a mental health professional, or what would you say? And I say cheerleader. And they
Oh.
look at me like, what? Cheerleader? I'm like, yep.
Where's
My
your
job
pom
is to
pom?
keep two, right. My job is to keep two warring factions at the negotiation table until we're done. So that takes a lot of encouragement. It takes a lot of, hey, let's do this. Let's go. We can do this. Let's make it happen along those lines. That's what it is. So when we talk about these difficult negotiations, 9 times out of 10, that works. You guys don't want to go through the courts, do you? Your divorce will take 3 years. You'll spend $200,000. Do you have that kind of money? I know I don't. Oh, wow, really? They're so blinded sometimes by their anger, they forget that litigated divorces cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and take years to unfold to guess what? Get a result that neither of you will be happy with. So I can't find a good thing as a result of you not mediating and resolving it there. That usually works, like I said, that works a majority of the time. Of course, as we mentioned, you're always going to find the person in a negotiation who knows it all or who knows better, and they're going to just take their ball and go home or go wherever they're going to go with it. And that's unfortunate. And that's why we see about 2% of cases are actually litigated in divorce. So 98% of the people, as we've experienced, have the ability to at least avoid the legal system, the full blown legal system. But invariably, there's always going to be someone that, like we see in the news or we see in politics or things that we see, that there's just never going to be some kind of negotiated resolution. And that's a shame, because at the end of the day, just settle, right? That's what we're saying. Just settle. You'll get there eventually. You might as well do it now.
Yeah. I just thought of a question. With divorce lawyers, there's this perception that they are a little disillusioned with love. Is there any sort of life mindset that you have taken on based on your work?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know in terms of the law, in terms of professions, and even all of the above, at the end of the day, my mindset has gone from being upset about things to saying, I've provided people a better alternative to whatever it is that they would have gotten themselves into. So by working with us, whether they're ending their marriage, working with us, they're avoiding the legal system, they're avoiding the courts, they're avoiding acrimony, they're saving money, whatever it is, I just think to myself that I'm helping parties, even if they're ending their marriage. And same lawyers, friends of mine are the same. It's like, because we have some very, like, I know some very nice attorneys who are very mediation friendly, very supportive. They, even if they aren't in a mediation situation, they want to get their clients to negotiate and resolve issues and give and take a bit. So they even understand that they're trying to protect these clients from a lifetime of damage. That, I think, has to be the mentality, especially in what all of us do professionally in terms of ending people's marriage. You could say, oh, wow, gee, another happy customer. I ended somebody else's marriage today. Nice going, Joe. Right? Yeah, good job, buddy. Instead, you say, well, okay, I at least help them move forward in a more peaceful, cost effective,
Yeah.
amicable way. And a lot of my colleagues kind of feel the same way, who have the same mindset I do.
Yeah. I guess to make this more specific, has your view on love and marriage or on partnership or anything else changed after working on this for a while?
Yeah, I think so. I've always been a person who's committed to resolving issues. My parents, they fought a lot and they would argue and they would stay silent for sometimes months at a time. So talk about an impasse.
Mm.
And they would never resolve things. And then finally, of course, they got divorced. No surprise. For me, what I've realized is not to, again, kind of revel in anyone's misfortune, but when you look at couples and you've seen as many of couples as I have, you realize that everyone's problems really fall into a handful of buckets.
Mm.
And if you're willing to address them and you're willing to work through them, you probably could. Not everybody, of course, right? You want to be clear if there's infidelity, whether it's physical or financial, whether perhaps there's abuse or there's substance abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse. These are things that, yes, they can be quite challenging to work through. But on the other hand, I do believe that people don't necessarily have those skills. So, as I've to answer your question, yes, I have actually looked at my own relationship and said, you know what, these problems aren't insurmountable, provided I use the proper language and I use the proper framing and I offer alternatives and I'm willing to compromise, right? All the things that we do in negotiation instead of coming into it going my way or the highway. So, it has actually helped a lot, I think, in my own marriage using those skills to strengthen my bond with my wife rather than, separate it. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's cool. And now, sorry, I'm coming up with all these questions on the spot because your work is so fascinating. Have any
It's
couples
okay.
that you started working with like ended up staying together? Maybe because they learned new skills?
Yeah, one in 17 years.
Oh my
Oh.
And I
God.
know. So when people get to us, Gerda, really, there's a law firm in the UK that studies this. And every year they ask their clients who come into their firm, how long have you been thinking about divorce? And the last survey that I saw that they did, their clients had spent 2 years and 1 month thinking about divorce before they ever stepped foot in the solicitor. That's what they call in the UK, the solicitor's office. So people really have been giving this some thought for quite some time. It's very rare that people are just like, oh, we're not getting pizza tonight. That's it. I want a divorce. There's a lot more undercurrent to it. And I do think when people get to this point, they feel like it's almost like a high stakes game of chicken, that there's no point of no return. And I say, well, there's no shame, right? If you think it's salvageable, certainly you don't have to go through with the divorce. Most people, though, as you just learned, really choose to. And I guess it's because they've been thinking about it for so long that they just feel like there's nothing else to go from. They just move forward from there.
Yeah,
Mm.
that makes sense. Now I want to know what happened to that couple.
Yeah, well, I was also thinking, I wonder if clients should come to you earlier instead of in the
Maybe we
much
should
later
say,
stage. Yeah.
That's
say to our
Alex.
clients.
We've talked about that. So funny you say that, Alex. There's a burgeoning field called marriage mediation, which is exactly that, teaching couples negotiation skills. And I've thought about it, and we've written an article in our blog about it. Never really pursued it because my experience is people, they have a hard time understanding when there's a problem and addressing it preemptively. It's usually like you don't bring your car to the mechanic and say, I know I don't have a flat tire, but just change all four of my tires anyway. Sure, why not? It's usually when you're stuck at the side of the road and you're like, damn it, I need to get new tires, right? Because you got a flat. So similar things in relationships, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our business too, we're trying to do a lot of education around we get the highest ROI for our clients when they work with us early in the process because a lot of people think negotiation starts once they receive the offer. They're like, I got the offer. I want to now start talking and dialing the levers. But if we dig into their situation, they had made a lot of mistakes along the way that kind of chipped away and gave away their leverage. And so by the time we
Yeah.
get to the offer, it probably is not as good of an offer that they could have gotten if they had avoided all those mistakes. So we always tell our clients to come to us
Yeah.
early. Then we can make sure that just from the very touch point that you have with the company, you're not making any mistakes, you're protecting your
Yes.
leverage. Yeah.
So I wonder if there's a parallel between our work and your work, where I assume you're familiar with the Gottman Institute and how,
Yeah, of course.
yeah, they came up with the four
The
horsemen, I
four
guess,
horsemen of the
right? Yeah.
apocalypse. Yeah.
Yeah, one of which is resentment. So maybe by the time they come to you for divorce mediation, the resentment has chipped away at, I guess, the love and goodwill. And if they came sooner, there would be less buildup of the four And maybe we'll link to this in the show notes because it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a great book. My wife and I read it and we workshopped it together at dinner. We read the book and then we talked about it. We would read a chapter and then we talk about it. It was better than talking about the day. And
Yeah.
we always, we'll see a couple, and a lot of times when we see couples, we see them differently than most people do, right? Because of
Yeah.
our backgrounds. And I'll say, oh, two of the four horsemen are right in their kitchen. And
Yeah.
she'll laugh. And people are like, what are you talking about? And they're
Yeah.
like, well, just walk away because we don't want people to know. It's like, that's exactly it. Resentment. Once resentment comes in, ooh, it's hard to get out. It really is. But it can happen if you just realize that people are negotiators, and we all have our own foibles. No one's perfect. We're all unique beings. And if you're willing to look at people that way instead of trying to fix them or figure out what's wrong, it's a lot easier to come to agreement. Even if you look at them and you say, I don't understand you, nothing you're saying makes sense, but I'm here because I want to reach an agreement, so I'm open, I'm listening, right? I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm open to the possibilities. That's a key takeaway when you're thinking about negotiation. Forget the person, right? We're not trying to analyze the person, whether we like them, don't like them. We're really just focused on what's the outcome, what's this negotiation going to look like, and how can I get what I want and give what I'm willing to give in order to reach that goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to shift to another topic because we get asked this all the time
Yeah.
when people ask what I do for work, and I say I have a bootstrap business with my spouse, and the first question I get is, what is it like working with your wife?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of our listeners are also freelancers, business owners, and so I
Mm.
wanted to touch upon this as well, but I wanted to know, as a husband-wife business yourself, what have been some of your key learnings? What do you feel has contributed to your success in the partnership, especially for having done this for so long?
Yeah. So, number one, first and foremost, job descriptions. That far and away helps. When you know what your job is and your spouse knows what their job is, and there can be overlap. You just want to make sure that you know who the ultimate decision maker is. We went and we took a whiteboard. We had a whiteboard in my office and we literally wrote down every function when you think about a company, right? Sales, marketing, IT, PR, whatever it is, accounting. You write it all down. You say, okay, put an X next to the box. Who is in charge of this? Who's in charge of this? It doesn't necessarily mean the other person doesn't get input, but you have to go in agreeing that ultimately, yes, if I would like to give you input on what colors the website should be, I'm free to do that. However, at the end of the day, if you happen to be the website designer person in charge, you're going to pick whether it's blue or green, right? So those kinds of things. So job description, number one. Number two, and this is especially important if you work from home, we often work from home. You need to define what is personal space and what is business space.
We should do that.
We need to do that. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm telling you, 8 o'clock at night, you flip on the Netflix and you've got your coffee or your tea or whatever you're hanging out with. The dog is sitting on the couch next to you, and your spouse turns to you and goes, "Hey, did you do this week's payroll, or did you?" No, 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 no.
It's so
I'm trying to
real.
watch this thing here. No, no, no. Right? So really define it, and it's become a joke, a funny joke in our sense that we both have offices in our house, and we'll be standing, I don't know, in the living room or something, and my wife goes, I need to talk to you. And then we walk upstairs, we step into one of our offices, and I go, what is it? Even if it's Saturday afternoon, right? Yeah, sure, we could have talked in the living room, but we keep those spaces the best we can sacred, right?
Mm.
Also define office hours. I get up about 6. I'm having my coffee. I'm not great in the morning until I at least have the coffee, the breakfast. Give me an hour to wake up. Okay. My wife, on the other hand, she hits the ground running. She flips open her phone, her email. If before I even put the first bite of cereal in my mouth, she says to me, "Hey, you're 10:30. It wants to reschedule. Can you do 12?" I'm like, so we also define office hours, at least 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And if it's going to be later, we'll talk about it, of course. those are really key things when it comes to the tactical piece. Number one, though, I'd say above and beyond all of that, remember which relationship is which. If you get in an argument at work, do not let it carry over into your spouse time.
Mm.
That was work. That happened. That's a work day. Shift gears. You'll need to get good at what I call the hard right turn. Sometimes something happens during the day. You have a disagreement with your spouse, who's your business partner, and now it's 6 o'clock and you want to go out to happy hour or take the dog for a walk. And now you just need to be lovey-dovey. You just need to be your partner. So it's a hard right turn. It's like, hey, how was your day? Hey, let's leash up the dog. Let's go. Hey, let's get to the bar. And that's it. And then tomorrow is another day in the office in which you will resolve that problem. So really remember that when you're working together as spouses, they are two completely different relationships, and you need to learn to leave the business at the business. Find you laugh, but find your room in your house. That's your office, and one that's, for example, if it's your living room, keep it sacred. And then when you do that, you can look at your spouse in the office as your coworker. If there's a problem, you can resolve it in the office. Then when you're sitting on the couch watching the Netflix at 8 o'clock, then that's when that's spouse time. So those are the things to really draw those bright lines between those two roles and responsibilities are what I've found over the years to be the case. So I hope that helps the two of you as well.
That's
Yeah,
very
we
helpful.
need a bigger place.
Yeah, I mean, living
Yeah,
in San Francisco, the spaces tend to be smaller. So, but as we were talking,
I
I'm like,
know.
okay, how do we implement all these things Joe's telling us? But I love everything you shared, and we also follow these business leaders. They're very big on social media as well. Alex and Layla Hormozy. They
Yep.
are a married couple too. But what you said reminded me of something that I heard on Alex's podcast, where he said when he's trying to resolve something with his wife and she asks him something. He says, "Well, okay, am I going to be putting my husband hat on or my business co-founder hat on right now to respond to you right now?"
Right.
So I
Mhm.
think I think that's super applicable for us too. So we had talked about for years starting a business together. To Gerta's credit, she always believed in us from before day one that we would crush it as co-founders. To be honest, I was the one who was very hesitant. You just hear these horror stories of,
Statistically, it's
I
like
think,
a,
and
yeah,
statistically, right?
it's only
Yeah.
downside in general. Yeah.
Yeah, and where business can bleed into the relationship, and over time that chips away, and couples get divorced. I mean, maybe good for your business, but
Yeah.
so I was nervous going in, but there was a key learning or an insight that I realized I only could know after we started working together. And what that is you
It's that we have complementary skills.
so the
And also
complementary.
trust
Oh, the
aspect.
trust,
So I
yes.
used to, well, we both have had different ventures over the years, but I was in a venture-backed startup with my co-founder, and I noticed there's so much inefficiencies where you're trying to communicate with your co-founder, with the investors, like I'm working. Look at all the things I'm doing. Also
Right.
wondering, are they working? Are they doing enough? Versus with your husband, your partner, I trust that you want what's best for us and for the business. I don't need to look over your shoulder. And similarly, you don't need to look over mine. And that, I think that
Hmm.
saved us so much time that with a co-founder that there's not already built-in trust, it would
Right.
so much more inefficient.
Yeah, and even when we have disagreements about what to do within the business, it really helps knowing that at the end of the day, everything that Gerta is advocating for on in her position of our disagreement, it ties back to just having the both of our best interests in mind. And same
Hmm.
with me. But when you have co-founders who maybe was a friend or someone you just met at work, you just never know if there's another
Right.
agenda there. But for us, everything we do, every action, every effort that we put in goes back
Yep.
into our household. And I realized that only after we started working together, how that saves us so much mental bandwidth that we can redirect into building the business itself.
Does that resonate
Yeah.
with you guys?
It's so funny. If you didn't say it, I was going to.
Yeah.
What you learn, and you've hit on something important in both marriage and in business partnerships, is that when you're working with your spouse, if there's one person who has your back, it's your spouse. And if they don't, we have a different conversation on our hands, right? Where
Right.
our spouse is doing something shady behind our back. that's a different
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But I think that also helps with when you're having a conversation. I don't like to use the word argument, but a disagreement, perhaps a heated conversation, where you're looking at this person, whether this is in your spouse or with anyone else in life. Always remember, it's not about you, it's about them. When they're saying something to you and they're coming at you, it's not something you did, it's something that's bothering themselves about themselves. And when you're having these conversations and you're with your spouse and you're having a conversation, so for example, with Cheryl and I, it could be that it may appear as an argument to the outside person, but really what it is a desire by both of us to get the optimal outcome.
Yes.
Mm.
And if you reframe it that way and you say, well, this person isn't just a raving lunatic yelling at me, they really believe in what they're saying and they really want the best for this company. And they're really passionate about this. So let me examine the position behind the position, right? Here we go. So we're getting back into getting yes again. And we go around that person. We look at their conversation from behind. Like, in other words, I'm them now
Yeah.
having that conversation. And like, okay, I can see these points. I might not agree. We're going to try to take the temperature of this conversation down. But at least by doing that, yes, that leads to exactly that. Your spouse, in theory, has your best interest in mind. So anytime there's a disagreement, it's really just because you want it to be better, not because they're just trying to be difficult or get in your way, prevent you from getting what you want. So if you
Yeah.
remember that, you'll be good. You know?
I love that. And I want to add a cultural layer to this that might be unheard of in the US. So I'm from Albania. We're very Mediterranean, hot-blooded people. And one way that we Albanians debate sometimes is you have very strong opinions on a point because it's expected that the other party will also defend their strong opinions, but you are open to you changing your mind. But you just take on this, hey, I'm going to take on this. You don't spell it out like that, but you take on a certain position and then you expect the other party to take on their position and defend it until you reach, oh, okay, actually, your point makes sense or my point makes the most sense.
Yeah.
So sometimes what looks like maybe a fight or this person seems they're advocating for their point too strongly, it might be
Mm-hmm.
just that person indirectly asking for you to provide stronger evidence that it's not their way, but it's your way. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
have encountered that before or seen that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was at a conference in New Jersey and gave a presentation on this exact topic,
Okay.
cultural differences in
Oh,
negotiations.
that's so
Oh,
cool.
Now,
Yeah.
so along your lines, Gerda, I'm half Irish, half Italian. We are
Oh,
yellers
okay.
by definition, right? We are aggressive, loud. I'm originally from the New York City area. And so one thing, and growing up in the shadow of New York, there's certain nationalities that gravitate when I grew up in the area. And another thing is there's a very large Jewish population, Israeli Jewish population. And a lot of my friends were, Israeli, and when they would talk, it sounded like there was a fist fight that was going to break
Yeah.
out at any moment, right? And they were just screaming about how happy they were that we're going to dinner together, right? And
Yeah.
passerby on the street would be like, "Is everything okay?" And
Yeah.
people are yelling and waving their hands, right? And that's something that's also, I believe, important to recognize when you go into a negotiation. You have to understand, is this person, introverted, extroverted, hot-blooded, cool-blooded? A lot of times we talk about, right, silence as a tool in
Right.
negotiations. You may get across from someone like, say, who's Germanic, someone who might be of a more cool personality, someone English, right? And you may think, well, this person's uninterested or not engaged. No, we have to recognize that we all come from our own cultural backgrounds. That adds another layer of complexity to our negotiations. So, like when you were talking, Alex, before about kind of preparing, and but even before you walk into the negotiation, you might want to get a read on the person you're negotiating with. If they've got any speaking engagements that you could listen to, or hear how they talk, or read anything that they write in terms of their styles. All these kinds of little things matter. And so you're absolutely right. There are people, and especially as you would imagine in a couple, oftentimes opposites attract. And so in a divorce situation, someone who may appear to be a bully,
Right.
as a professional, you have to notice, are they really a bully, or are they just Albanian, right? And they're just, yelling and screaming, and the other person is
Right.
just quiet, not because they're afraid. It's just that's stylistically what they do. So we, as the negotiator, need to pull the other party into the negotiation, right? With whatever style. And as we would call that, right? Mirroring, right? We'd also have to mirror when we talk to one person, we're loud and we're exaggerated. We talk to the other person, we lean in, we whisper, are you okay?
Yeah.
And that helps people feel comfortable and bridge those gaps as well. So absolutely makes
Yeah,
perfect
Yeah.
sense.
we have so many thoughts on that. And I think I know where this is headed, but I was just curious if your talk on the cultural differences in negotiations, is that public? Can we watch it? Can we link to it?
It was just at a conference. No, I
Okay.
don't have it anywhere public, but it was exactly what we were talking
Yeah.
about. Where going into a negotiation, especially stylistically, when I was in my corporate days, I was in negotiations for a large publishing company, and I would travel the world negotiating these multi-million-dollar sales contracts. And I remember being in a negotiation in Japan, and I'm sitting there, Westerner, Eastern culture, the gentleman who was there was another person in the room. Obviously, they were our contact, the secondary person, but this other individual, the older individual, was more the decision maker. If we were there for 2 hours and maybe 5 minutes of conversation happened, most of it was silence. A
Mm.
lot of it was this. Why, just nodding, closing eyes. And as an American, you want to talk, right? You want to jump right in there. Let's get after it. And then we left 2 hours later, and I said to my colleague, I said, what just happened? Do you have a deal or not? And Jean, who was the sales director at the time, she says to me, she's like, that's just the first meeting. We just wanted to go in and share our position and hear their position. And that's all we had hoped to achieve. And then we went back again the next day. Then we went out to dinner. And before we, right? And as an American, you're like, listen, I got other calls here. Let's either get the numbers on the invoice or let's move it on, right? I got other people. And that's an important point when you're negotiating. You have to recognize someone's style may be influenced by their culture. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, this is everything that was said here. I feel like also is a huge learning in our relationship because Gerta, again, as the Albanian hot-blooded, the style where you defend your position
It's true.
very, very strongly. But in my
Yeah.
culture, I grew up so I'm Korean American. My parents were
Yep.
immigrants from South Korea. And in my culture, you have to be very deferential, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think something
Yeah.
that we were noticing a lot.
Explain.
Well, so what we noticed a lot is Gerta would defend her position very strongly, but for me, my default was you typically want to keep harmony in the environment and
Right.
just defer to the betterment of the community versus defending your own position. And that's something that
Mm-hmm.
we've had to learn, and I very consciously try to make sure that I'm also being more direct about my opinions on my thoughts on what I think we should be doing, not just in our business, but this comes up in our relationship as well. But those cultural differences, it was really important for us to keep in mind as
Yep.
just over the long term.
Yeah, we were misreading each other. I think Alex was
Of
reading
course.
me feeling very strongly about my position, and I was reading it as him not caring
Caring.
enough about his position. Why aren't you defending your side? Well, we've been together 13 years, so we're learning.
Yeah, and I
Well,
have become very familiar with Albanian culture. We have been going every year. We go once or twice a year for the last, I don't know,
Yeah.
decade plus. But it's kind of become a joke where when I'm with Gerta's family and they're having a conversation in Albanian, I
Very
don't
loudly.
very loudly,
oh yeah.
extremely passionate. I don't really understand what's happening, and it seems like they're arguing. And then later, I would ask Gerta, and they're like, "Oh, we're just talking about like, should we leave now or should we leave in like 2 hours?" Or it's like, and so now it's whenever it sounds like there's a heated conversation, I just ask Gerta, I'm like, "Oh, we're talking about the weather right now, right?"
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't that the way? If I may share a quick story
Yeah,
as a former New Yorker and from New York City. I will never forget this. And people always talk about how New Yorkers are rude and all right, brusque. And I said, I don't think people truly understand New Yorkers, and here's why. New Yorkers are some of the friendliest people on the planet. Yes, their delivery leaves a little bit to be desired. And this story indicates it. So I'm standing outside the public library in New York City, and there is a classic foreign tourist family, husband with the camera around the neck. They got the map in their hand, totally lost. And the exact stereotypical New Yorker that you picture in your head with the, hey, how you doing? That guy walks up and says, what are you doing? You lost or something? And I'm standing here, right? I get my hot dog or whatever. And they're in their best English trying to explain where they're trying to go. And the guy grabs the map and is like, it's right over here. Come here. Come on, just follow me for God's sakes. And it just and takes the map and starts and you coming, and like the couple's like I'm like walking and following because the guy wants to show them rather than explain to them because he obviously knows there's a language barrier. So this guy stops what he's doing, doesn't get his hot dog, takes time out of his day to walk into Times Square or wherever they were going. And you just laugh at that stuff, right? Because had you heard the guy's approach and you'd looked at the guy, greased back hair, the whole classic, thing, you'd have been like, what is happening? But it was that cultural difference and it was a couple of Asian descent. And so there was the deferential culture versus the very in your face culture. And it was a total mismatch, but this guy just wanted to help. So he helped in his own way. It might have been aggressive, but he was aggressively helpful. So
Yeah. And we found this ties back into one of the key things that we try to tell our clients around negotiations is what helps your position the most and protect your leverage and make sure things don't tank is regardless of how the other party is acting or what they've said, if you just assume best intent, just take that on
right,
as an internal belief that, look, if I just assume that they had the best intentions, that helps me come up with the best position on my end. It helps me keep my
right,
emotions in check. And so I think in your case with the New Yorker tour story, I mean, if you just assume best intent, in this case, the guy genuinely wanted to help, albeit
right.
had the typical abrasive New York delivery style. But yeah, assuming best intent is a really key takeaway that we're always trying to impart on our clients.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it doesn't do anyone any good in a negotiation. Say you were applying for a job and the hiring manager got you to take some very low ball offer and didn't give you any flex time and no vacation time and no benefits. That manager is smart enough to know that the minute a better offer comes, you're out the door, and that costs companies money to train and hire people.
Yeah.
So they're going to want to make sure that you're at least reasonably happy that you are worth their time and their investment to get you up to speed, to get you as an employee, and not just, haha, I got over one on this guy and now I hired him at half the price he really wanted. That's it goes exactly what you're saying. So you remember that and think about when you're thinking about a negotiation, if you're not going to get everything that you wanted at the beginning, especially in like salary or a company when you're getting for a job, also don't be afraid to say, well, if this isn't going to happen, what are the tenets? What are the conditions that it could? So when you perhaps accept the offer at a lower salary, one of the first things you might want to say is, okay, well, I'd like to be here for the long term. I'd love it, if I could invest in this company would invest in me. What is it that you would like to see me doing in order to be a successful employee that will put me in a position for salary raises or for job promotions, right? You want to be offering. And I think a lot of times when we talk about bringing it back to what you folks do, when we think about negotiations as the employee, as the job applicant, we want, right? Whereas well, if the company, what's the company getting out of this, right? They want to get something out of it too. And by offering first, I always find in every negotiation, it's that, hey, people like to help. And if you want to offer up some help right out of the gate, you want to say, hey, I want to be a great employee here. I'm looking forward to digging in and learning more about what I can do to be productive and what I can do to be a good member of this team. You're setting a tone so that later on, when you go ask for that raise or that promotion, you've already made it kind of clear that you're willing to help and perhaps even had a conversation about the things that your boss told you you could be doing in order to qualify for that, right? So you've got some information in this negotiation as well. So
Totally. No, that we're fully on board with all that. Just to add to that for our audience, we do advocate for people to negotiate when they get a job offer, they will get the best ROI then, rather than wait and say, let me prove myself and then I'll increase it. Because once you're in a job already, there's the status quo bias. They know you're less likely to
Hmm.
leave. And also raises and promotions are usually a percentage of your initial offer. And so the highest possible offer increase you can get is at the job offer stage rather than saving it for while you're already in the role.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I call it the bank of goodwill, if you will.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
So, right, you want to get something, you also want to the old team player.
for
So,
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Last,
Yeah, well, as we wrap up here, just given your line of work, if you could give one piece of advice to couples, whether they're married, divorcing, building a business, what would that be?
I know you guys are going to take notes on this, right? You're going to talk about this at dinner.
Yeah. We're gonna rewatch the
Oh man.
episode together.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to point out, see at the 35-minute mark, see what he said? You're doing that, Alex. I would say always believe that your partner has your best interests in mind.
yeah,
If you go into it with that mindset, you'll be pleasantly surprised. I truly believe people want to prove you right. They want to be good. They want to be helpful. They want to be supportive. And if you go in with that mindset, people are more likely to do that versus if you're always suspicious and you're always questioning them, they're probably, what? I'm never going to make you happy. Forget it. I'm done with you. I can't handle you. I can't deal with you. So going into it with that mindset, my experience has shown me far more often than not I have been pleasantly surprised rather than woefully disappointed. So
yeah.
that's what I would say.
I love that. And there is a psychological concept, I forget what it's called, but when you do treat someone as if they are good and as if they can rise to the occasion, they actually want to meet you there and show you that they can. I
Hmm.
remember there are some studies, maybe with babysitters or cleaners, and you treat them well. I want to find this, but
Yeah.
if you treat them well and assume best intent, they will be more likely to behave well as opposed to the
Hmm.
way around. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we see that all the time, right? We talk about divorce negotiations, and invariably one party, let's take the topic of alimony really quick. Most people, they assume someone doesn't want to pay alimony. But so when the person who needs it goes into the negotiation, they're immediately lobbing grenades at the other side. You're so cheap, you don't want to pay. I'm going to struggle. You make so much more than I do. Meanwhile, the other person hasn't said a single word.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, and more often than not, the other party says, of course I know you need help. Of course I know I make more than you do. Do you think I want you to live like in an apartment next to the railroad track? No, of course not. And they're really shocked, the other person who's, all fired up. Really? Yeah, really. So
Yeah.
if you had just assumed the best, it would have gone a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
I feel like we could like talk for another hour or
Yeah.
longer.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. This has been so
Yeah, my
fun.
pleasure.
Maybe we need a part two at some
Yeah, I
point.
think so. And Joe, if there's anyone listening who wants to learn a bit more about your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, best place is our website, equitablemediation.com. That's our company, Equitable Mediation. On there, you'll find all kinds of info about me, our company, about our services. And we also believe in education. So we've got a learning center with blogs and podcasts and articles and video courses, really, because as we've been talking about here today, right, you don't want to go into these kinds of complex negotiations blind. You want the help of professionals like me, like the two of you. You want education, you need resources. You don't have to be an expert at it. You don't have to be professional and know every single thing, but it is good to be prepared. And so we like to do that for our clients, just like you're doing for yours.
Awesome. Well,
Great.
we will link to your website in the show notes and
Great.
really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so glad that this episode happened, which started with that cold email that scared me when I first saw that email subject line, but this is what it led to, and this is great.
Throughout this recording, I've been thinking of a spicy title to our newsletter announcing the podcast.
Oh, so maybe.
The divorce mediator.
Okay, actually, I like that. Maybe we'll go with that. See how the click rates are on that issue.
Oh man, well I'll tell you this. One of the things our friends always joke about is they have like one of our business cards, and then when they're like having a funny argument in their kitchen, one of them will slap it down on the counter and go, "Don't make me call Joe. Don't make me call him."
So, I might have to use that. Can you send me some of your cards?
That's right. Just slap him down, get a fridge magnet, put it right up there for you.
That's great. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us about all this. And we are very looking forward to sharing this with our audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a blast. And thanks for letting me be your first guest. Quite an honor. I really appreciate it.
Of course, the inaugural. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe.
All right. Thank you so much,
Take
Joe.
care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.